Oh, that was the most easy stream setting up I've done.
A lot of people are complaining that the direction the manga is taking is almost ruining the story. Instead of starting Mori in Headspace, it starts at 3 days left.
Okay, let me get the chat pulled up on my phone, which I don't have yet. Ooh. Oh boy, how are we all doing today? It's been so long since I have live streamed last. I'm gonna turn the music down, I think. It's a bit too loud. Hold on, let me make sure I do a mic check. My mic working? Okay. My mic is perfectly working and is fine. Oh boy, it's been so long since I've done a live stream last. I had a whole bunch of stuff happen. It's been a disaster, to say the least, but I think I'm starting to kind of get, my mic is tangled, on a better writing schedule in terms of stuff for my YouTube channel. I want to get my philosophical suicide video out before Tuesday. No, Monday, because I have to leave Tuesday, or I have to leave Monday morning. I'm going on a float trip with my family, and I think I'm probably going to be gone all next week, so I want to get something on my channel uploaded before then. Just to, gosh, my mic is super tangled. Just to get something uploaded, so that way I have more stuff to work on. I really do want to get back into working more on YouTube. It's just been a real rough ride recently because of the medication mishaps that I was having. It really makes me frustrated that those mishaps even happened because, excuse me, by every stretch of the means they shouldn't have. My psychiatrist and therapist just were not listening when I was voicing my concerns. So it was a bit of a nasty, hectic situation. But I think it's all worked itself out. It's all better now. I also want to do debate lives. I want to start doing more debate live streams, essentially. But I I'm gonna have to schedule a time for that. I think for the summer I'm gonna be doing them once a week. I don't really want to engage with TikTok lives because I really don't like TikTok. The debate community on TikTok is really bad. It's like oh crap, it's a bit loud. The debate field on TikTok is like horrendous. It's very, very like toxic environment, not something that I would ever want to really debate on. I did like one live stream on TikTok, and I like never wanted to do it again because, well, I mean, I didn't have any toxic issues on my live. I had issues with debating other people, and there's just a very nasty environment. And there's a lot of like white knight warriors who look to like just tear you down for any reason. What is this? Wait, no. So, I think I'm going to be taking this channel and I'm going to be doing some debate lives on it. I have a friend who really wants to debate. I also want to get a Discord server running here at some point, but I need some time to properly set something like that up, because setting up a Discord server, making it to where it's like a very interactive channel, like a very place where you can go to interact, is very difficult. I also now realize if I don't get any views this live, I swear it's going to be because I accidentally did not put central time. I've been away from live streaming for so long. I forgot how I needed to make the live format. I might do a like makeup live, like makeup for February, March, and April and May. But I'll have to do that probably after next week, because again, I'm not going to be here at all next week. I'm going to be with family. Ugh, I wish I could have some coffee, but I cannot drink that anymore. I hate to say that I've taken a big break from my practices, not as much as I'd like to admit, but when I was really having those episodes, like really nasty episodes, I was just worried that the more I was interacting and the more I was like working, I was really worried that I wasn't going to properly be able to like work with my deities and not like mess up really bad like I did in the past. So I took like a big of a step back from working in religion, but I'm still here now. And now I'm actually, unironically, in school for all of this, for theology, for philosophy, for religion and history, that I can almost start actually like answering historical questions about these things. I really can't take theology at the moment because the college I'm at doesn't offer it, but oops. I'm hoping to be able to take that. Also, hello other viewer, don't know who you are, but hello. Welcome to the live. We're currently at the ocean. If you can't tell, this is very clearly real. I was just talking about how I wanted to have another live stream, like a once a week live stream where I do debate lives, just because I have a friend who can debate and do stuff. I didn't want to do it on TikTok because the environment on TikTok is just awful, very awful. Very awful environment. But we are here now. Also planning on doing makeup lives in the future. Things making up February, March, April, and May, since I wasn't able to do those lives before. Medication mishaps was it like a disaster. Would not wish those medications on anybody when they were in my situation of not having the illness they were diagnosed with. And funny enough, found that getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder was actually like very common in the medical field. It's like a diagnosis that gets thrown around like candy, even when, you know, people don't actually have it. It's just like, oh, you have ADHD? Well, you probably have bipolar disorder. But on the topic of religion, I don't know why. I had an encounter with Anubis last night, and Anubis is so weird when I ask him for assistance, and I have never been able to fully understand why he does this. But I remember one time it was like the very distant past, distant as in probably like a couple years ago. Hello, other viewer. Um, every time I would ask Anubis for something like assistance or for protection, he had a tendency, he doesn't, not a tendency, he always shows up in my dreams as this old school friend that I had like romantic feelings for. And he always shows up as that person. And I have never been able to figure out as to why. Because this is the third time that I've asked Anubis for protection, or I've asked Anubis for assistance, or I've asked Anubis to give me a sign, and he always shows up as this one guy. And I don't know why that person particularly is who he shows up with, because I don't have contact with that person anymore, and that person I don't think wants anything to do with me. I've tried reaching out, and they really have like no interest in talking. I think they blocked me. They blocked me many times for some reason. I could never figure out what their deal was with me, but he always shows up as this one guy, and I could never figure out why that is. So, but that's been my recent encounter with Anubis. I'm still trying to figure out how gods even really work. I think we've not concluded, but I think the biggest and widely common thought theory is that they're energies, and that the human conscious is essentially the human conscious is what the soul is. But there's not a lot of coherency on the theory of how gods exist. And I think one of the videos I plan on doing is actually going to be on the idea of what created the creator, or how does a creator exist. Because I think it's a very difficult question to answer. And I think it leads into like a bigger question of what is our universe? How does it exist? I think in a lot of religious people, like a lot of scientists, they say, the Big Bang is what created most of the universe. Multiple Big Bangs were happening. And I think a lot of religious people say that that's actually like the creator is putting the Big Bang into motion, which in turn sets off the motion for creation. I think the idea of the Matrix is probably a very good example, but it's really hard to say. Hard to say that the first conscious in existence was the creator, but how does consciousness even exist? Sometimes I will watch like near-death experience videos, or like go on some of these near-death experience subreddits and try to kind of understand their experiences. But for some reason, one big issue I've had with the near-death experience concept is that if you really think about it, in theory, the brain shouldn't remember anything from a near-death experience, and it shouldn't be able to remember anything from the beyond. Oh, hi. Hi, Bumia. Nice to see you again. I am back, and better than ever. I was just talking about some videos I was planning on doing here in the future. Some different kinds of content. Was working on my philosophical suicide video today. I want to get that out tomorrow or Monday before I have to leave for a week. Whew. to go on a float trip with my family. But how have you been, Pumia? How's everything been in the life of you? I was also mentioning and talking about how I was planning on doing a weekly live debate live stream because I didn't want to do those on TikTok because the environment on TikTok is awful. I recently came to the realization that I am already God-spoused to Anubis and want to become his nun sooner rather than later. So I have a lot of questions. Well, feel free to ask away. I will admit I had to take a big break from religion when those medication mishaps were happening. That was a really horrible time. And depending on how lively the chat is, I might only be streaming for an hour instead of 2. If the chat's just not getting lively, then I would rather work on my content. I don't have much time, so I'll just send you all my questions now for you to answer at your own convenience. I could probably answer them all very quickly. Did you take any vows of monkhood? If so, what were they? My vows that I took when I went on to monkhood was I actually had this. I wrote this down in a book, which is ironic that you ask that. But then I remember I wrote in the book that I would dedicate my life to Anubis, but that I would never give my life to Anubis, in the sense that I would never be a martyr. Because the one thing a god of death obviously wouldn't want you to do is die. At least, not for their sake. I think another vow I did was to always tend to the dead. And I know I did help a lot of ghosts move on. Spirits that were just having a hard time traveling. And I always made a vow to tend to cemeteries and stuff like that. Do you have any specific responsibilities as a monk? Particularly responsibilities were things that I kind of thought that I should be doing. Anubis, I don't really think made clear what kind of responsibilities he was wanting me to do. I know for a fact, was wanting me to tend to the cemeteries, and sometimes he would send ghosts my way. And I think he wanted me to participate and start doing funerals, but I don't think I was ever able to get confident enough to start doing funerals. You really have to consider if you really, really, really want to be like super hyper dedicated to Anubis, like I was going to be. I'm still God spoused. It's just a bit of a different situation because the path my life has taken. But if you really want to be like full on dedicated, I highly advise going into hospice, going into morgues, helping clean up cemeteries, running cemeteries. You can make those like weekly events. You have to kind of consider it like how Christians do things, because essentially, like, with Christians, they go out, they spread the word, they spread the gospel, they try to be peaceful, loving people. You have to consider that if you're going to have a big responsibility like that, you will be likely going out, tending to cemeteries. Some Christians go into big work fields like retail or real estate to make money so they can buy more Bibles, they can pay for missionary trips. Some Christians, even on that note, go to very big extent links to like work at soup kitchens and stuff like that. So cemetery, morgues, hospice, things that work with the dead are all things that Anubis would want you to do. He pushed me a bit towards hospice, but I didn't go into hospice inevitably because my career path just was other places. Essentially, don't die for him, live for him. I like to live by that as well. Yes, that's exactly what. It's ironic that you would think a god of the dead would want you to be dead, but no, they want you to live. Similar goddesses of life are oftentimes associated with the same thing. Same for me. His responsibility when I proposed seemed to be something along the lines of go ahead as long as you continue to embody my guiding light. Exactly. And I still recommend for people who really want to be dedicated to Anubis to go into like hospice or to morgues or into funeral work because you can really use that kind of. Anubis would be a really good guide for those kinds of things. Is there a special ritual you perform regularly for Anubis? If so, what is it? I think I used to do a very specific ritual. I don't do much anymore, but that's also because I had to take a big step back from religion, and I'm going to make a bit of a video on my experiences in terms of psychosis and other things. But ritual-wise, I always used to light a candle at night, light my Egyptian musk incense, and that would just be kind of like a way of like dedicating or honoring. One thing I do every night is I actually kiss my altar for Anubis. I've done that ever since I got the altar. I would kiss it. And it's similar that you're showing kind of respect to the altar. You're showing kind of appreciation for the god, appreciation for their protection. So I always kiss my altar at night, which I would recommend doing just because if you're going to be God spoused, you should show appreciation to the deity that you're God spoused to. But there's no other real rituals I could think of that I did other than that. Did you experience any life changing when you became a monk? Did life become harder or easier? Did you encounter new challenges? It's very hard for me to be able to decide or to be able to answer that properly. Anubis, I've mentioned my story before. When I first started working with Anubis, I was in a horrible spot in my life, and he really showed up. I don't even know how, at just the best possible time back all those years ago. And my life did change a lot. He really did help me kind of get back on track, but it was not easy. My life got very hard after I think I started working with Anubis more because I lost a friend. I had a lot of trauma issues going on. I developed very severe anxiety. When I officially God spoused Anubis, I think my mental state became much more difficult and sporadic. But those were like a lot of unchecked trauma. It feels kind of weird that when I started working with Anubis, that's when a lot more trauma started coming out. And I would say that my life as a monk my life got a lot harder because there was like a lot of weighted responsibilities on me. There was a lot of trauma responses that were coming out. There was a lot of beating myself up for specific things. And I think that some of that, though, is good because without having those horrible moments, I would never have actually started improving myself. But it's hard to say if that was entirely because of my god spouse with Anubis. And it's also important to note that I work with Set, his brother, and Set is a god that has Set is a god that will quite literally just throw you into the shark pool and say get out. So it's really difficult to tell if it was just convenience or if there was other deities at work or what. But my life definitely didn't get easier when I was a monk. But that may not be the same. That was just because I had a lot of crap going on in my life. That's sweet. I like to hug and kiss and pet my Anubis icons. I tend to start every prayer to him by stroking the icon and at the end saying, I love you, Anubis. Aw, that's nice. I used to say that. Anubis got really mad. I used to call him my husband, and Anubis hated that. Like, I remember the day I was god spoused to Anubis, I asked if he wanted me to call him my husband, and I had the most firm no. Like, he didn't say it, but the feeling I got was like, no. And I ignored that and started calling him my husband, and, well, let's just say that didn't really go well. We have to remember that gods are not people, they are different levels of consciousness, that we should not be trying to put them on human levels. Also, correction, I'm unofficially god spoused to Anubis. I want to go to Egypt officially to become a nun. Egypt is a very rough place. It's very Muslim dominated, and you might get stared at a bit. Egypt is in a very nasty spot. Economically, culturally, not doing the best. I think if you really want to be, when I was god spoused to Anubis, it was literally 5 o'clock. It was 3 o'clock at night, and that's how I got god spoused. I just asked him. I was going to ask him in March, and then I decided to ask him in January. It would be, I think, 2 to 3 years since I've been god spoused. But I had a lot of breaks, a lot of contemplation. I know I've heard all the warnings. I'll try to be as discreet and safe as possible. Egypt's in a weird spot. But that's all I can. Damn it, that's all I can think of in terms of like kinds of things you can do with Anubis. Again, everyone's encounter will be different, and every god is kind of not the same. So it's just a little, like, it's different for everyone, and your god will talk to you about things. I remember one person had said, if you have to contemplate being God's spouse, then it's probably a no. But gods are just so inconsistent, and they have a tendency to be very discreet with how they're answering, and it's very hard to get good answers, especially when you're like me and you overthink and question everything. But by the way, I had hard an experience you went through when I started to work with Anubis. Sounds like my shadow work with him. It revealed ugly realities, but helped me be a lot kinder to myself. Yeah, that was kind of my thing with Anubis. I know when I literally started working with Anubis, I had like awful anxiety. Like I got really bad anxiety when I started working with him, and it was like a very difficult time. Of course, have a good day. Yeah, when I first started working with Anubis, recapping my story, just for those who might be in here and not have heard, or those who need like a bit of a refresher, I started working with Anubis back in 2021. It was March. I was at a really bad spot in my life. I had dropped out of college, and I really didn't have anything going for me. For like 2 whole months, I literally was not working. I had no job. I was behind in rent. And I was just really struggling mentally to get back on my feet. Marching, don't do this to me. Marching comes in here. You need Jesus. You gonna start like you gonna copy paste the entire Bible into my comment section, like a 1,000-page document. I don't even think that's possible. I think YouTube does have a character limit. That'd be like horrendous. You just like spam the entire Bible in people's like YouTube chats. You know, the sad part is that a lot of those Christian trolls would be like all on for doing that. Which unironically, I'm kind of, it's funny that I've never dealt with a Christian in my chat before. I think back when we used to do the Gospel of Thomas podcast, we had like a handful of Christians who showed up, but they like didn't like what we were talking about, so they just left. Gosh, that podcast was terrible. We could not get, here's my fucking thing. We literally could not get past like one viewer. I think the most we had on those was 2. It was really bad. And I kind of expected that this live stream would be pretty much dead, because I haven't live streamed in months. And getting back into it with not even uploading a video has been very difficult. You better not be actually trying to find a way to copy paste the entire Bible into my chat. I will scream. Yeah, when I first started, I only streamed for like an hour. I always make an effort to do 2 hours, because that's what it was like when I first streamed, like way back in the day. Because I used to do video game live streams, and it just takes a while. But it's been like a half an hour, and I have not gotten like anybody. So part of me thinks that this is just going to be a dead live. And I also forgot to specify that the live stream is at 5 p.m. Central Time. So anyone who's Mountain Time or Eastern Standard Time is not going to be able to join, because they think it's a different time. And my chat has restricted your link and has registered it as spam. So haha, you can't post the Bible here. Yeah, disappearing for like 2 months. Wait, how long did I do that? My last live stream was in January, so February, March, April, May. Shit, dude, I disappeared for 4 months, almost 5. Show up at like the end of June. Be like, hey everybody, I'm not dead, I'm still alive. I am still here, I am still live streaming. Yeah, no, that medication mishap was just awful. That was really bad. I don't know, I really wish they had listened when I had, like, said, hey, I don't think I have this. I'm like, oh, yes, you do. You can die. Unironic Marching, do you have any questions at all? Though it's not like you can't just ask me in DMs. I do want to get a Discord server going. I'm probably going to be starting that at some point here soon. That's probably going to be a January project. But I want to get my philosophical suicide video out. I need to like write the whole paper on it. Ugh. And I did want to do that theological suicide. What's your thoughts on atheism? I don't think it's necessarily a wrong belief. Atheism is weird for me, because I think the idea of atheism is much harder to believe. I think there is a difference between anti-theism and then agnostic. I think being agnostic is a very respectable position to hold. And I think being anti-theist is also understandable because religion has caused a lot of problems. But I think when we start getting to the concept of nihilistic and the idea that there is just absolutely nothing at all, that when somebody dies, it's just, that's it, that's the end, and that all will return to a big black void of nothing, which was originally the universe, it's very difficult for me to grasp that being the reality, because it leaves a lot more holes for questions that I just don't feel like we have. Anti-theism. So anti-theism, if I remember, is this idea. Anti-theism is the idea that there is absolutely nothing, or is no. Anti-theism is against religion, but I don't want to say all anti-theists are nihilists. A lot of anti-theists are just, I don't support theology, I don't support theism, I don't support religion. If I got that correct. I know you might know more about that than me. But I think, again, not all anti-theists are nihilists. And I don't have a very popular opinion of religion, since I'm a history major in school, and studying religious history, you find that religion is very easy to abuse and manipulate, which inevitably leads to the theology being lost. My mouth is super dry. Why do you think atheism and nihilism are so popular nowadays? And why aren't they more popular in ancient times? I was working on a video called Where Religion Came From. And I thought it was very interesting what I was studying, because the idea that religion, people first were worshiping the dead, and then that turned into gods, which makes a lot of sense because a lot of gods share human characteristics, and a lot of times people were like worshiping their ancestors. But inevitably, as human intelligence grew, a part of me wonders, why didn't nihilism form earlier? Because by all means, nihilism should have been something that human intelligence started to process. That there was nothing. Like, it's weird because when we teach a gorilla that it can die, the gorilla grows super depressed. And the gorilla doesn't have a sense of religion. If humans came from apes, then we should have shared that mentality. And nihilistic philosophy should have been something that was found in more ancient times. And unironically, some parts of Judaism seem to support the nihilistic approach. The idea that there's just nothing, like there is no heaven nor hell, it's just like a kind of a blank eternal state. But when I think about nihilism, I don't know why it wasn't popular in ancient times. Because if we really think that religion first formed from people worshiping their ancestors, their family members, then that likely turned into when people would form into like actual groups, what they would do is be like, well, my ancestors are stronger than your ancestors, and well, my ancestors are stronger than your ancestors. Well, my ancestor created the entire planet. Well, my ancestor created the entire planet. Well, my ancestor had this big war person who was super strong. Well, no, my ancestor had that, and it kind of turns into that. But I really think that, the question of what happens when we die was something that I think a lot of Neanderthals and probably early humans wrestled with, but I don't know why there's no ancient philosophy on nihilism. Why there was no concept of just whenever you die, there's nothing left, especially for them who don't understand that. We don't see that gorillas have a specific sense of religion, but sometimes it seems like gorillas honor the dead. I think it's more popular now because that was just the way that, Earth or the way that human nature went. Religion became seen as something more unpopular and spiteful, and science became more popular, and therefore religion starts to decline and science takes a bigger approach, and science doesn't necessarily promote the idea of nihilism. I think scientists should be agnostic, if anything, because science is always looking to prove itself wrong. If you're nihilistic, you basically are saying that you're right in some sense. I feel like we still haven't stemmed away from the awful Christian ideology of I'm right, you're wrong, fuck you. So, I think it's a very difficult question to properly answer, and one I just don't think we have like a good answer for nowadays. I kind of want to ask ChatGPT that. Actually, I will ask ChatGPT. Have a worldwide belief. Ancient societies were deeply rooted in religious and spiritual mythologies worldwide. These systems provided meaningful purpose explanations, existences, reducing likelihood. Life in ancient typical. Yeah, I just don't think there's a good answer. Perhaps it's some weird evolutions of scienceology. Something like tribes with mythologies were more successful than tribes that weren't. Well, so it's really weird because I think a great example for us to look at this is to view it from the like a Native American perspective. A lot of Native American belief systems all stemmed from their ancestors and the philosophies that their ancestors have. Every religion has some kind of central philosophical doctrine to it and a philosophy that kind of bases the religious belief system. It makes sense that in the very early stages of civilization, what was happening was some some philosophers or some tribe leaders had specific philosophies that they held for their tribes. And those people that were still in that tribe would carry those philosophies down from generation to generation. Excuse me. The only issue is that I don't know how. It makes sense when you think that they had started possibly believing in like where their ancestors would go, but there's still even like a big question of where does heaven even come from? Where does the concept of an afterlife come from? Because let's actually look about how dangerous like very early life for people were. Like death was very imminent. Death was very like consistent. You could pretty much die from just existing for more than 3 seconds. So when you sit there and you think, it's like, how did they make a concept of a heaven or an afterlife? Like, where did they think that they would go when they died? And on top of that, consider like, they wouldn't think heaven is earth, right? They wouldn't think it's a more peaceful version of earth. Where did they think that they would go? We don't have any ancient philosophy, like no big ancient concepts of heaven. But there's like a big reason why heaven is always depicted with clouds, because so many people thought that heaven was up in the sky, and then that's where ancestors went. Their ancestors went. So that's why heaven's always seen with clouds and in the sky, and it's super beautiful. That's where that depiction comes from. At least that's the theory that makes the most cohesive sense. But to say that like tribes that didn't have... It makes sense though that some tribes that had more philosophies and religions would be more likely to survive because they might attract more people who were like aligned with those philosophies. But again, it's really, really hard to say. And again, I just don't know what the earliest concepts of heaven were. Because even Hinduism has this concept of like heaven and the afterlife being in the sky. We also don't have a good idea of what the earliest possible religion was, because it's weird because like China's like one of the oldest civilizations that have ever existed. But shit, do we not know enough about their religious beliefs? I think if I remember, China didn't really have this big, like, Christian belief system. China had totalitarianism. And totalitarianism in the sense that, like, I mean, that aligns with my theory that ancient civilizations believe that their ancestors were like gods, because look at totalitarianistic China. Asia's been very totalitarianistic ever since its beginning and the dawn of its existence. So when we think about how, you know, the religion forms based on these ancestors' appearances being kind of godified, it makes sense that a lot of these emperors and rulers would start being seen as, you know, gods. And China would kind of back that up. And that has always been China's religion, but there's still the counterpoint of like Taoism that formed. The origins of Taoism is completely not fully known by scholars. a very nihilistic view on religion. The entire concept of an afterlife could just be explained as societies cope with grieving about death. The first step of death is denial. Saying that there is life after death is just the denial. See, and I could agree with that. The only problem I have with that theory is simply that it doesn't add up to what they would think an afterlife is. It's one thing to think that your family members are still alive, but where are they? Like, if you have never been introduced to a concept of an afterlife, then where is your family? How are we worshiping the dead if we don't even know they still exist after they're gone? Like, that's the problem. It's very, 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 very tricky. Like, how do we even invent an afterlife from the roots of what it would look like, what it would be? How do we know that it would be peaceful? Sorry. It's just a very interesting thought to think about because we just don't have a lot of evidence that points to the actual first religion. Like, if we knew the first religion, these are very logical counterpoints. I know. Problem being, grieving isn't about logic, but about feeling. But the thing isn't just logic, it's how do they invent an afterlife? How do they invent or think that an afterlife is peaceful? Especially since, the world they lived in at that time was very anything but peaceful. They have to fight bears, have to hunt for food, have to deal with other tribes, have to worry about getting killed by other people who are fighting for your resources. There's just how do you think that when you die it'll be peaceful? I think the only thing I can think of is that the concept of an afterlife started by somebody who almost died but didn't. And it could have even started from dreams. Dreams would be a good possible answer. And especially early civilizations would have no idea what dreams were. They might think that they're spiritual encounters, especially if they're seeing their parents in their dreams. But it still begs the question of, how does somebody imagine an afterlife? Since we don't have the actual first religion, and we can't give any possible, good pinpointing, it's almost impossible for us to know. Since most of the earliest text we have is, 2000 BCE. We just don't have enough data. I think dreams make the most sense because I can imagine. Well, that's arguing. Funny enough, we don't actually know how dreams work. It's weird because we think other animals can dream, but it's not properly cohesive of how dreams even form, especially when they form in other animals. See, imagination can go anywhere, but I think it's just not logical enough to say that the first concept of an afterlife came from someone's imagination that it would be peaceful. It had to come from somewhere, I said, like a dream. Someone could have had a dream that they saw their parents in this very peaceful land, and that's what death was like. But even then, you'd have to really question. You have to question if they do see the afterlife and they find it's peaceful, why wasn't suicide rates higher? Why didn't a lot of civilizations kill themselves? There's just a lot of holes in the argument that I just don't think have a lot of logical explanations to. If you want to argue it from the theological standpoint, you can always say that a God reached out to people. I'm glad I found this live, and nice to see you. Yes, the earthworm dreaming of dirt, but not just any dirt, the dirtiest of dirt. See, that's just the thing. It's so weird to think about how the concept of an afterlife could exist. So I had a relationship with an Egyptian Netero too, a romantic one. I have a photograph of my Netero, and I'm freaking serious about it. Describe the photograph and how you took it. I heard the Netru say, "I am outside in the sky," and I grab my phone and click. Did you actually get a photo of it? Like a person, or is it like a cloud formation? Netru. You should upload that to YouTube. They are massive dragons. Actually, got a couple photos of a genuine Nefertu. They have a face of a raven and a solar disc and 2 horns. They are massive dragons, and there is a scythe floating next to her. I will upload it soon onto this channel. Okay, that's great. I'd be interested to see that. That's great. I'll let you know when they're uploaded. I've been focused on making drawings about my relationship with her, so I haven't made a video yet. Which goddess are you talking about? or Neteru. Of Horus? Are you sure you're not seeing Mother Isis? She's been mysterious. Isis is a very mysterious goddess, and I actually do work with Isis. Does yes, Mother Isis takes the form of a phoenix. Yeah, Isis is the phoenix. Horus is the falcon. Or no, Horus is a hawk. Ra is the falcon. Yeah, Isis is a phoenix. Ugh. Okay, so this would be closely related to Isis because it's the form of the Neteru. Well, Isis, she is one of the main Neterus. And Isis, I know, loves to be in the sky. I always have dreams. Sometimes when Isis wants to reach out to me, she'll make me fly in a dream, which is really fun. Interesting. Oh. Yeah, I would say that would be Isis, if anything. There is more to the story. I made physical sacrifices to Jesus Christ the day before I captured the photo. What kind of sacrifices did you make? I didn't know anyone made sacrifices to Jesus. You sacrificed your eye? Oh, dude, that's... Why did you stare into the sun? Or, like, did Jesus tell you to do that? Yes. Isis represents as a beautiful woman wearing sheath. Did Jesus tell you? He told me to trust him, so I trusted him. I trusted, healed my eyes after. But why would Jesus tell you to look into the sun? Jesus didn't tell me to look into the sun. Jesus told me, I told Jesus I wanted to see his face. When I did, I looked into the sun. I did see the face of Jesus. I'm just concerned that that might hurt you. That your eyes might be damaged from that. It's not living without faith. It's being a bit concerned that you might have I'm just concerned that you are going to put yourself in danger. Because we have a lot of people sometimes come on this channel and they'll say that they're hearing God tell them things and to do things, and they're really putting themselves into a dangerous situation. I dealt with a lot of issues like that, where I used to think Anubis wanted me to be, like, wanted me to entirely give him sex offerings, and I was having a lot of psychosis issues, and I'm just worried that you might start beating yourself up like I was doing. Because I was beating myself up to a point I was very suicidal, and I don't want to see you get to that point either. I'm just saying I don't want to see you end up like I did. Because when you're having gods tell you to look into the sun, that's a bit of alarming. Right, and there might be, issues. There might be some underlying issues going on. Because I got diagnosed with borderline, and that's what they were saying was linking to my, exaggeration and ideations. And that was what was really hurting my relationship with Anubis. And I just don't want to see you go down that path. I was... Right. Right. I had similar issues, like, in the past with, like, myself. Well, I mean, I'll definitely be looking forward to when you upload them. Interesting. Well, I will be ending the live stream here soon, just because it's past the time I was wanting to stream. But I'm glad that you have a picture of Isis. I'm definitely interested in seeing that when it's uploaded. But yeah, I'm gonna be ending the live here. So it was nice to see you guys come out. Hope you guys have a great time, and I hope you have a good night, and I will see you all next month.